If I say the term puppet country, then you may think as an ordinary puppet with strings on its legs and arms, but on an actual country, a little bit confused of what I'm talking about. Well, during World War II, Germany had two allies, Slovakia and Croatia. They were independent states, but they were essentially just puppet states or puppet countries. So, which in reality, they were essentially just puppets with Germany as a controller. The Slovakia and Croatia had their own leaders and governments, but they did in reality just whatever Hitler told them to do. So that is the basic of a puppet country. Also, these two nations didn't exist before the outbreak of World War II. So where are they coming from? Well, slow down, I'm just taking Slovakia today. Hitler's Allies, Episode 3, Slovakia during the Second World War. 1918, and World War I is over. One of the losing nations of World War I was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was dismantled and dissolved. Two of the nations which was created out of the Austro-Hungarian Empire was the Czech Republic or Czechia and Slovakia. The Czech Republic or I will stick with Czechia, it's simple to say. They were part of the Austrian part of the empire and was more industrialized. Slovakia had been part of the Hungarian part of the empire and was more agricultural. So before the war ended, the two parts had met in secret in the United States. I will come to that later. They discussed to join these two nations into one nation, and it was simply called Czechoslovakia. There was not just only Czechs and Slovaks who lived in Czechoslovakia. There were 3.6 million Germans who lived in the western part of the country, which are here. Then there's 750,000 Hungarians who lives in the southern and eastern part of the countries, which are here. And 500,000 Ukrainians, or Eastern Ruthenians as they name themselves, because Ukraine didn't exist, which are here. In the 1920s, however, Czechoslovakia was one of the most democratic nations in Europe at the time. There were also an economic boom in it, so they exported materials such as Skoda and weapons all over the world. And as a precaution, Czechoslovakia joined the little Entente, which was a military alliance with Romania and Yugoslavia. They were going to safeguard any Hungarian expansion. I will cover that in the Hungarian episode, and to make sure that no restoration of the Habsburgs, which ruled the former Austro-Hungarian Empire, didn't take control in any nation. So in all, Czechoslovakia was a real powerhouse in Central Europe. I talked about Pittsburgh earlier, and in 1918 in Pittsburgh there was signed a treaty, and it read, number 1, approving a union between Czechs and Slovaks. Slovakia will have its own administrations, diets and courts. Basically, they will all have their own things and respect each other, but they are one nation. And it worked pretty well. That made them to the economic powerhouse they were. But not everyone was satisfied with the creation of Czechoslovakia. One of the most notorious was this man, Joseph Tiso. Do not mix him up with Joseph Broz Tito. He was a Catholic priest, and he has also become a Monsignor by the Pope in the Vatican by 1921. But the Pope died that year, and he lost the title. But he was not only a priest; he was also an active member in the Slovakian People's Party, which was a far-right nationalist party in Slovakia. Tiso, he became the party leader after the founder and the leader, Andrei Hilka, died of natural causes. So the only thing Tiso wanted for Slovakia was to get Slovakia autonomy. And they will get it, and even more. On the 12th of March 1938, the Anschluss happened. Then you may wonder, what means Anschluss? Well, Anschluss means connection. And by connection I mean in 1918, when the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was dissolved, Austria became its own nation. And Austria, they tried to connect with Germany, for after all, Austria spoke German, but they were forbidden at Versailles. So there was a feeling that they wanted to be connected to Germany. So in 1938, Hitler was poised to take Austria by force. So the leader of Austria, Kurt von Suschnig, called for a referendum. And on the 12th of March, the eve of the referendum, Hitler sent in his army to occupy Austria. But they were not met by military force from the Austrian army. They were instead met by civilians who greeted them with flowers and the Hitler salute. Because in the outcome of the referendum, 99.5% had voted yes for unification with Germany. So the Republic of Austria became overnight the Ostmark region of Germany. So directly after the Anschluss, Hitler focused his sights on Czechoslovakia. Because remember the German minority of 3.6 million of them who lived alongside along the border regions of Germany. Hitler wanted them to integrate them into the German Reich. In response, Czechoslovakia closed the borders to Nazi Germany, so war was on the horizon. But the Czechoslovak army was well equipped and prepared for a German invasion, because in Sudetenland there was a lot of defensive fortifications along the border. But it will be no fighting. Because in September 1938, Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Britain, boarded a plane and went to visit Hitler in Germany. Chamberlain had come to Germany to discuss with Hitler concerning about the Sudeten crisis, because the area where the Germans lived was called the Sudetenland. During this meeting, Chamberlain agreed and gave in to Hitler's demands. 3 days later, France did the same, but no Czechoslovak was invited to discuss the matter. But Hitler wanted this as a pretext to go to war. But then his ally, Benito Mussolini in Italy, think instead that they should have a power conference instead. So in the end, the Munich Agreement was agreed upon between the major powers in Europe, Britain, Germany, Italy and France, and it read that the Sudetenland, with a population of nearly 5 million people, and lands of all the orange in this picture, was to be given to Germany. And in return, Hitler promised that Germany will not claim any more lands anywhere in Europe. Some famous quotes from Prime Minister Chamberlain during the September month of 1938. He said during the crisis, he said, "How horrible, fantastic, incredible it is that we should be digging trenches and trying on gas masks here because of a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing." That sounds a little bit rude, but that was he said. And then after the crisis, when he returned home, it was this picture is representing, he said, "I have brought peace in our time." But this has ensured no peace. They have just delayed the war that was to come. As a consequence for the Munich Agreement, it led directly to the collapse of Czechoslovakia. I will take this in stages as the picture is representing. As number 1, Germany takes Sudetenland in the Munich Agreement, and later in November of 1938, Poland invades and annexed Zalcie, a region in Czechoslovakia which was populated mainly by Poles. And number 3, the first Vienna Award is signed in Vienna, and it read that Southern Slovakia will be given to Hungary. And later in March 1939, this is the final year of Czechoslovakia's existence, Hungary invades kartoffel Ukraine, which was a region where there was mostly Ukrainians, but also lots of Hungarians. They declared themselves independence just a few days before, and that led to Hungary invaded and took over the region. Then number 5, Germany invades and takes the rest of Czechoslovakia, but not all of it, and the remainder, and it's in number 6, Slovakia declares itself independence from Czechoslovakia, but Slovakia is just becoming a puppet state under the German Reich. So look out for part 2 of these series of Slovakia, or the first Slovak Republic, as many Slovakians are saying it, and then I will go in on how much the Germans or the Nazis inflicted on Slovakia. Coming soon!